to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. I've been doing this podcast since September of 2012, and boy, are my lips tired. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. I'm having trouble getting myself on screen, Joel. I don't know what's going on here, but there I am. I'm having trouble getting on screen.
I don't either. Maybe it was our pre-show conversation. I don't know.
Well, actually, it kind of is. And let me clue the audience that we were talking about going over the edge, because we do that all the time around here, right? Yeah. And I won't clue the audience in on specifically what we're talking about because it was way over the edge. But seriously, I was sitting here while the music was playing. I asked myself, I wonder what ways we're going to go over the edge today. Because we always find a way, right?
We do. And we never know. That's the beauty. I don't know what area it will be in, but there'll be an area.
The topic gives us a lot of places, to come close to the edge just by reading the topic. Relentless solution focus. Just putting the word relentless in there. Yeah. That alone is going to put you on the edge of something.
Well, these concepts sort of border on the edge of stuff that angers some people too.
Well, we're good at that too. Yes. I always say it's good to have a skill,
It is. Well, we're great at that, and
we are. Yeah. So, well, let's get to it then. So, once again, this is a book you picked out for us from your thousands that you read every year. Well, maybe not thousands, but many hundreds. How many do you read? You read a lot of books a year.
Last year's 127.
Wow.
So, I mean, and most now, to be fair, I listen to them. So a lot of people say I cheat, but that's how I do it.
And you're putting the time in. That's not cheating as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So, but I love to listen. I listen in the car, listen when I'm working out, when I have breaks, and it's just constantly doing that. And me, if I get fascinated with topics, I do deep dives and go deeper and deeper. And so it's this book today. I listened to the book, but what introduced me to even finding this book. My original topic is a type of therapy that I use sometimes called solution focused brief therapy. It's a solution focused brief therapy, and the brief comes in. It's sort of given like you're supposed to have this concept implemented and completed in about 10 to 13 sessions. It can go further than that, but this book goes even further, and that's why I like that Relentless. It using the concept of solution focused therapy, but it's also using it maybe in a little more than the brief therapy, making it a mindset, how you deal with things, because we have, as we talk about in several different shows, we have a bias toward the negative. We're always looking for problems. It's human nature to have scanned the horizon for problems. So that is a problem-centered thought. They call that PCT there, problem-centered thought, where your thoughts are always scanning the horizon for problems. And so that's what that is. That's what it stands for, which is very normal, by the way. It's just a protective mechanism. We talked before. Society is always, since cavemen days, we're looking for where the problems were. And so,
and by the way, I just wanted to say for the record, I'm really good at it.
Yeah.
I have a long history. I mean, I have a great history of proving I'm really good at scanning for that crap.
Yeah. And, and for the most part, I don't anymore, but every now and then I can find myself, jumping to problems from just bits of information.
Sure.
Different than my old way of worrying about things. Money's no longer my biggest concern, but my time is. So when I have like a change in my schedule or last minute, I got to go do something, I find myself being triggered in that area because I'm very prompt. I'm glad to be on time. But if something just comes like unavoidable, I'm just like, and I have to stay and stop. No big deal. I'll work around it. I like predictable days, and none of my days are ever predictable. So I've come aware of it. So that's sort of my last frontier. It's there's no longer, it used to be, I got a $2,000 tax bill. What am I going to do? That's not a problem. But these other things like interrupting my schedule or my plans. So that's where my area of work for me personally is. But that's sort of first world problems for.
It's a good starting point because it really doesn't really matter what one's personal weak point is, what the chink is in the armor, because we all have it. The real question is, how can we tie in the topic today? Because the topic is all about that solution focus. You mentioned that there's a particular therapy with the same name in it that you engage in. But I also think about when I hear the word solution focus, I think about how we have a tendency as human beings to not only want to find solutions, and we're problem solvers. All of us to one, some of us to a lesser degree, others to a more degree. Some people like me are real good overthinkers, but one way or another, we're all problem solvers.
Yes. So the
and
concept.
the idea of focusing on. But there's another thing here too. This is the part I want to bring in. When we're so focused on solutions, we also have a tendency to lose the big picture, which is a really interesting phenomenon that goes part and parcel with this. Isn't that kind of like how we do get these chinks in the armor, because we lose the big picture? We're so hyper focused on this one little thing.
Yes, and that's sort of what this theory addressed, because having a solution focused mind isn't necessarily jumping to the immediate solution to whatever that has just triggered you. It's somehow, I want anything that comes along, this whole therapy comes along with the premise that everything has a solution to some degree. Everything has a solution. And of course, you don't like the word everything. So yeah, I do believe there's a solution. Now, we might not like solutions. It might not be where we normally are comfortable with, but solutions exist. Mm-hmm. And that's where that's what this therapy starts with. Everything has a solution, and we can survive anything. There's a solution to it. Doesn't mean there's not bad things happen. We're not going to magically make those go away, but we always get, as soon as we can get to solution focus, we do. And sometimes accepting bad things happen to put us in the right place for the next thing to happen can be part of that solution thinking as well. So I know you want to comment on that.
Well, you got to know me so well. It's ridiculous.
Your facial expression Pro tip, by the way, Walt, don't play poker. Just don't.
Well, I do play poker. I just don't do it at a table where people can see my face.
Okay, that's fine.
And if I was at a table, I'd wear a mask.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't have a prayer.
Yeah.
If they can't see my tells, I do really well. But forget it, otherwise.
Yes.
But no, getting back to what we're talking about here, though, like you said, solutions are everywhere. You mentioned, I'm going to put it in my own words. You mentioned that terrible things can happen to us, and I think anybody can come up with some of what those terrible things might be. Really, really horrible things. It's kind of hard to imagine that there can be a solution to some of them. And I've even had people defend to me, no, there is no solution to this. You just have to live with it and endure it. And that's actually a fairly common response, I think.
Sure. And as I always say, everybody has their personality, how they deal with things. I happen to believe that no matter how horrific, and I can speak from experience, I can find a solution to the event. It doesn't make the event good. It doesn't mean that I'm very aware and as you know, I've experienced some really bad things. So there's solutions on the other side of it that once we can get to solution mindset, and it doesn't happen easy. When you have big traumatic events happen, it's not an easy thing to flip to solution mindset, but what are you going to do with it? The example that I use frequently in the show is, when my son died, I have a solution for my son dying. That's not a good thing. There's never a good thing about that. But how am I going to respond to that? Am I going to say there is no hope? I will never get over this, and I'm going to wait till I die and just have to carry this burden? That could have been one of the responses for me.
Sure.
And I'm not disrespecting anybody. The loss of a child is, you have to handle that how you want to handle it. So I'm not critical of anyone that does it that way. But I took it to believe, and again, knowing how my son's personality was and knowing how my personality is, after that intense grieving period, I made a decision that I now have two people to live for, and I need to put my foot on the gas. I got to live harder. I got to try harder. I got to go achieve more, because I'm living for two people now. That was my solution to TJ's death. And it was a very effective solution.
That's a really interesting solution. I got to tell you that there's a particular reason why I say that's a really interesting solution. And what you presented is totally legitimate. What I'm about to talk about is also legitimate, but it seems like an opposite, because my guest yesterday lost her mom when she was 5.
Sure.
And she felt that it was her job to live her mom's life up until the point her mom died, I guess, at around 37, something like that. I believe from lung cancer. And when she got to 37, after having tried to live her mom's life, so to speak, she was miserable. She was absolutely miserable. And she finally let go of that. And that's when her life turned around. My
Sure.
point being, both of those approaches can be productive approaches, and both of them could actually be counterproductive.
Yes, and that becomes, first of all, condolences to your guest. That's horrible to lose your mother when you're that
Yes.
young. But the idea that, again, this is within the solutions. It's all perspective based, like all of life is perspective based. And a 5-year-old probably doesn't have the mental acuity or emotional acuity to see how I'm seeing it. So that probably wouldn't have applied to her. But for me, and
Sure.
again, this is an individual solution for me,
Right.
is I needed, to make sense in some way, or make sense, or make a purpose, make a reason. I needed a reason to get up. I needed a
Mm,
reason to get going. So when I
yeah.
say I live for TJ, and I had to live for two of us, I never viewed that as a burden. I view that as rocket fuel. I perceive
Right.
that as, going forward. So everything is perception based. Stress. We talked about stress. Your perspective of stress determines how stress affects you. So it is two different things. Like everything we talk about, there's two sides to the coin.
Yeah.
And with your guest yesterday, she had. I mean, clearly she's 5 years old, so there's no one in her orbit telling her she's doing that out of the obligation of doing it.
Right.
There's a
She
difference.
felt
I
like
never
that's
view,
what she had to do.
yes, I viewed it as, how am I going to leverage this? Is, TJ has transitioned to the other side. He's already there. So
Right.
how am I going to get up? What is my button to make me go for? And I viewed it as I'm living for him, not as a burden, but as fuel, as I said. And that drives me. And I've that over the years that has sort of waned. That feeling that I was doing that, but I needed to get through that period. So
Yeah.
that's how I viewed it. Now, I still work. I love my job. I still go do a bunch of things. I have a million irons in the fire. But it's I'm not saying I let my foot off the gas, but maybe the intensity has been dialed down from a 10 to a 7, so to speak.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, like, this takeaway is that it isn't so much what strategy you adapt, it's how you feel about it.
Yes. That's that, and that isn't that applicable to everything.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when you have a solution focused mindset, and you're able to go in, you're going to identify problems. Here's a problem. But the quicker you can get to, the solution of, usually it's emotional, or what's going to drive me, or I lost this. So what is the solution to do that? I need to make more money, whatever that is. And the techniques discussed in the book in particular is always looking for, first of all, setting goals, measurable goals, getting solution focused. When you don't know what to do, you often heard me say, I have a client that doesn't know what to do. What should I do next, Joel? Wash the dishes.
Mm.
It's like, that has nothing to do with anything. It doesn't, but that gets us going. Get those dishes washed, then get that house cleaned up, then get out the door, shower, shave, whatever chain can begin. That's the solution. You're looking for solutions to problems that, not in a catastrophic solution, in the sense that there has to be change made. The other response to problems is just acceptance of the problem, and then anxiety of the problem, and you're just sitting in the problem. And that's this is where a lot of people, I'll have people that strongly disagree with me, and I'm fine with that. But there are people that really sort of, they own their problem. They identify with the problem, and they just want to defend the problem like it's incurable. And that's, that again, that's fine for them. It's just, I see it differently. And
Mm.
I was on a call the other night. This might be a little over the edge, so just, again, prepare, Walt.
All right.
But I was making the point, because my stance on, for most people, not everyone, but for most people, the greatest release for depression and anxiety is exercise, good diet, sunlight, those things.
Mhm.
Those are pretty good. There
Sure.
are people that have chronic depression and anxiety that are not, it's not quote unquote cured by that.
Right.
But I also believe even the worst cases can be helped some by those actions.
Sure.
Some. If you get the right medication. I never have heard of a doctor say, just take your medication, but do not exercise. It'll make your depression worse. Never heard that. You know, never seen it. But there are people that will defend that. The moment I say that, there's people like, you don't understand what it's like. And I do. I accept you have chronic depression and anxiety. I'm just suggesting maybe there's a multi-pronged approach with your medication, your therapy, and some movement. Going to therapy, taking your pill, and then locking yourself in your dark room all day isn't optimal for trying to move this process faster. So
at the very least, I think one of the things that I'm thinking about here is if you you made reference to washing dishes. Sure. And that actually resonates with me because I've talked about David Strickle before. He has a program called the Taya Boot Camp, although I think it's got a new name now. But anyway, when you go through that boot camp, there are a number of things that you learn. One of the things that you learn is a 3-step process for not necessarily for chronic depression, but you've fallen into depression. You want to climb out fairly quickly. The first of the 3 steps is washing dishes or something like that, a mindless task.
Sure.
And the purpose of it is to shift your energy into a different space so that you're not continuously focused on what you've been focusing on all along that's making you depressed. And it's like the first step of just like, I'm going to just change my environment in some way just by washing a dish. And in doing so, I set myself up for the next step in the 3-step process that they use.
And that's exactly the concept that we're talking about here. It sort of fits with solution-focused therapy. Part of solution-focused therapy can be simply, how do I get in a mindset that I can begin working on solutions? You might not be able to do it that day one, but washing the dishes. Like I have a client that had a really hard time getting motivated, getting out of bed. And one of the strategies that I'll do sometimes, like he would sit down to look for jobs and get distracted and just go back to bed because he felt overwhelmed. So what I had him do was, and this was very effective, I had him, get up, dress up, put on some work clothes, look good, do your grooming, go to Starbucks or Panera, take your laptop and act like you're at a setting to look for a job. He was much more effective when he got out of his environment that he had been stuck in. So getting out of the environment into the new environment allowed him to begin the solution process. And he, after about 3 weeks of doing that, he ended up with a couple of job offers. And because it's a different environment that's not influenced by your all the stuff that you're attached to where you're at.
Those attachments too, man, they can knock you down if you don't make the shift. Boy, they can just take you right out of the game.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Walt, but the person, when I was growing up in my little hometown, Plant City, Florida, right outside of Tampa, a small town, everybody knows everybody. My dad was the mayor, owned an insurance agency. So it was good and safe. There's good people there. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's where I developed my gambling addiction. That's where a lot of things. So I had an image of the definition of Joel in Plant City was something that I believed in. People there, they always thought me, Joel loves to gamble. He loves to have fun. I partied a lot. I always had that in my mind, the big shot image, all that stuff that took place there. So after everything happens and I go away and go through all the stuff I go through, going back to that town, there's almost a yearning by me, or almost a natural reverting back to who I was in that town, that image. It's like I was very worried about what people would think of me, and it's like I don't want to tell them this, or it's just there's the town itself, and I've busted through all of that, but for a while it felt that way, and it's just going back was just I was reminded by the environment and the people, and I'd find myself just feeling like the old me, which I wasn't real comfortable with anymore because I'd come up with a whole new lifestyle going on. But it was just weird that you go back to that place and you sort of tend to act that way.
I have experienced that, actually. I grew up in upstate New York, city of Schenectady, New York. And I went back to visit for the first time in a long time near the beginning of my marriage because I wanted to introduce my then new wife to where I grew up. We were kind of introducing each other to, here's where our background was and so forth. And the thing that struck me the most about the city was nothing had changed in 30 years. I couldn't believe how little it had changed. And as you describe what you just described, I realized probably what I was reacting to the most was my own emotional reaction to being back in the city rather than the city itself. Although the city itself hadn't changed a whole lot. It was pretty much the same. Visually it looked all identical. But you're right. I think I was actually reacting to what I felt and what I remembered feeling growing up in that city.
Absolutely. You have this memory of periods of time, or like growing up in my town, it was a great town, and
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with it or anything, but it it's what seemed so important when I was there. It's sort of silly now, but at the time it was really important, stuff that people worried about. It's just a different perspective, and like there's whatever the wealthier families in our little town. They were like very successful. Again, I'm not judging anyone where they're at, but then when you get to different parts of the country, and then you get up to you meet New York City people, and you meet wealth is a whole different concept. So what I thought
Yeah.
was wealthy is just being relatively okay, and when you measure wealth, then you got a couple $1,000,000 versus well, you're going to be okay. You got 100 million, you'll be fine maybe, but the $1 billion, you get such a weird. The perspective is so different from other places, and I
Yeah.
think you get stuck in the old town perspective too. It's just nothing wrong with it. It's just your emotionality is sort of attached to that. So when you revert back, it feels weird.
You're also kind of pointing at something here that I've been giving a lot of thought to off the show as much as on the show, perhaps even more off the show, which is we talk about. I mean, I think you made reference earlier to first world problems and so forth, and everybody who comes onto this program, they've had their own thing, they've had their crash and burn, they've had their rise like the phoenix from the ashes. They've wanted to become a coach to help somebody, or they wanted to create something that would help other people, or whatever. That pattern plays out over and over and over again. But one of the things that's consistent with that pattern is that there's nothing consistent about it. They all have different experiences. They come from different
Sure.
backgrounds. They have different kinds of traumas. And it occurs to me that what that really adds up to is, yeah, there are, I mean, if you kind of measure, here's this person's trauma versus that person's trauma, well, that person's is obviously way worse than this one, but only when you look at them side by side. Within the
Yes.
lifetime, the trauma is terrible. It doesn't matter how mild or severe it is compared to somebody else's. Within that lifetime, it's terrible.
Yes. Absolutely. And if we might have said this last week actually. I when people ask me, what's the worst trauma, and I go, yours. It's the worst
Yeah.
trauma. It is. It is. It's not. It isn't a comparison. Traumatic events to people are traumatic events, and they affect you. And I'll have people say, "Oh my God, you lost your son. That's the worst event possible." It is for me, for certain. I can't imagine anything worse. But
Sure.
at the same time, I have seen people. This sounds. I'm not comparing my son to a dog, but people lose their dog of 18 years. That traumatic. I'm not downplaying that. I'm not saying get over that because my son died and you should somehow have a different respect for that. That's people get off base with that. It really is. Your trauma is your trauma, and dealing with it is the same. The methods of your dealing with it is going to be individual, of course, but traumatic events are traumatic events, and there is no comparison or weighted event.
Yeah, about the only real comparison is comparison to the other events that have been going on in your life.
Yes. Yes. That's it. Yeah. It's all in your own lifetime that your
Right.
comparison can be with your own stuff, and and also you get to your perspective of as everything's perspective based for me. So it's just that's where my solution focus goes. I'm not this therapy for me is something that I'm more of a reframer, a perspective guy. It's just my perspective is my solution always. So
Hmm.
my job is to get that perspective where it needs to be. So if I find myself in my mindset going the wrong way, I'm like, I don't need to change anybody else or really anything else. All I have to do is change my perspective. I know that now. That's a wonderful skill set to have. Takes years to
Yes.
develop, but it sometimes I'll say I need to sit with this for a minute and change my perspective. It might take me a little while. Once that perspective's changed, I'm good. I'm really good.
I honestly have treated that as if that were my main purpose, my main goal with what I learned here on the podcast, talking with you for years, talking with other people that I've gotten to know over the time. Um, Anything that I can do to teach myself how to change my perspective on demand, so to speak, on my own wish to do so.
Sure.
That's like that's the superpower. I mean, we talk about superpowers. To me, that's a superpower. Being able to shift that way is huge. And I'm really glad, I'm proud to say, yeah, I have learned how to do that too. Not perhaps to the degree that I want to, but I've learned how to do that. There was a time I thought that was impossible.
Yeah.
I'm seriously just plain impossible.
Yeah, no, but that's when you believe that your reality is dictated to you, your perspective it can't change. When you understand that you create your reality with your perspective, that's where the magic happens. And you again, that literally means when you can control your reality through your perspective, you are the author of your life. You're writing it, you're doing it, you do that. And it simply is. When I say simply, by the way, I'm not suggesting it's always simple, but the idea that you can flip that script, whatever you want to call it, but look at it from a little different angle. And, when something's really important, and especially when I'm working with a client who, I have a couple of clients going through quite a bit right now, and it is some very serious stuff right now. And I don't know how it's going to work out, but it's never not worked out historically. So I have a really good track record in believing it's going to work out. Now, they want to know how this is going to work. I don't know, but if we can get to the perspective, it's going to work out. And we always have this idea that this one is the worst. There's nothing I want to be able to do, or whatever your current strategy is. But I do know there's always a way out. I have a friend that we flipped his perspective. He has cancer. And pretty advanced cancer, and the doctors actually, again, infuriated by this concept, said you probably have less than a year to live.
Oh boy.
And so him and I were talking, and he said, "But I feel fine." I said, "So what are we going to do with that information? I mean, you whatever advice they're giving you, I'm not suggesting you don't follow your doctor's advice, but why don't why don't we program today? You're feeling great today. What's going right today? Why don't we just try to get a daily focus and live, do your stuff, keep going to the gym, eat your good food. Don't and we just change the perspective of, he obviously knows he has something wrong with his body, but he also is using the logic that I can't feel anything wrong with my body. I've just been told. So do that. Let's ride that wave as long as we can.
Not a bad approach, really. It's a good approach.
Yeah. And so, I think he has a follow-up. There's certain markers. I don't know what I'm not an expert in that field, but he said they're going to check my markers because the last marker check, since we were talking about this, they expected it to go up whatever percentage it normally would at that level of cancer. And it was level. It didn't go up. And so I said, well, that pisses me off. And he laughed. He goes, that's good news. I said, I was expecting it to go down. Let's work harder.
There you
go. So he's developing an expectation. So I have no idea, but I'm expecting his next markers to be down. I really am. He is too.
I'm with you. Yeah.
And so,
I'm totally with you.
If they're stable or just a little bit higher, we'll just keep adjusting. We'll keep adjusting, but it's not, and he said, I'm not going to live with the idea I'm dying. So I'm going to live every day. And he's very successful. So he's not even really working right now. He's going on the boat. He's got kids in college. He surprised them. They're flying down, somewhere in the, whatever, Costa Rica, and doing some fishing. And so he's really out there just living. And that's the thing. So again, it's a perspective shift that becomes, and that's sort of like, the general topic we're talking about. The most of the solution focused stuff is the next level would be perspective shifting. That's what they're talking about, but this is like a pathway to get there for people that don't really understand that.
We were talking earlier before we got started on the show how we do have a tendency to go deep over the edge and sometimes lose people along the way. So I'll probably be doing that right now, but I'm used to it. I have come to realize that mind over matter really does affect the human body. I've learned it through my own experiences. And I can't say I've been able to apply it consistently. I have not been able to apply it consistently because I have not learned how to be as consistent as I want to be with my attitude, my belief, my focus, how good I'm feeling, all that kind of stuff. But to the extent that I've been able to do it, I've healed knees that supposedly weren't able to heal. I was told that I had macular degeneration in both of my eyes and that I was going to be blind in 20 years. I got that diagnosis about 12 to 14 years ago. My last eye appointment, they told me I had no macular degeneration, so I must have been misdiagnosed because it's impossible to get rid of it. Well, that's not the way I was looking at it. The way I was looking at it was somehow I'm going to beat this thing. Even if they're telling me that you can't beat it, I'm going to beat it. And then it went away. And then they had to kind of like justify it because it didn't fit their model anymore. You know,
Right.
I've had numerous things like that where I've been able to beat the expectations and in such a way that, you know, the doctors can't explain it. My ex-wife had the same thing. She was diagnosed with Graves' disease, hyperthyroidism. And for about a 1 year period, they were telling her, well, first they said there was about a 20% chance that you could get off the medications. Within a few months, they eliminated that one. They said, oh, no, your case is so severe, you're never going to get off the medications. You're going to have to consider perhaps a surgery. You may have to get, consider having a chemical burnout to burn out the thyroid, but it's never going to heal properly. And we refused to believe that. And then about a year and a half after that, after a long, slow decline of medications, it got to the point where she wasn't on the medication at all. And to this day, she's still not on the medication. Basically, she was cured, which they can't accept, So, but my point isn't that they can't accept it. My point is, regardless of what they're saying, you can still reverse it. It is possible to do. And the only way you're going to get there is if you are willing to take on a perspective that is challenging to that other viewpoint. That's part of it. That's part of the tough part is you're trying to adopt a perspective that kind of goes against the grain.
When you're doing a lot of testing, this is the medical field. Again, we need medicine. I'm not in any way anti-medical field, but let's say, for example, you go have your prostate enzyme PSA tested, and oh my God, Walt, it's 28, which is really high. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be like, oh my God. And they're going to be like, well, we'll check it again in a week or two and see what it is. Oh, it's 35. Oh my gosh, we got a problem. So we're going to, scan it or whatever they're going to, do, or put a scope up there, check it out, whatever they're going to do, take a biopsy of it all. And they're going to do all that. And there's also the idea that that's still a snapshot in time. Those tests are, you could have prostatitis. You could have an infection somewhere else. PSA could be affected by other things. I know people that ride bikes that have elevated PSA because it really is rubbing right on the prostate. So there's a million reasons. But when you get in the mindset that you're there, there's a major problem, then there's a tendency to see there's a major problem. So I'm always about just go really slow with it. Just, I don't want to be told I have cancer, because if I do have cancer, I'm going to get rid of it anyway. And, it doesn't, there's no sense in going through all that. And again, this is my opinion. It's not medical advice. It's how I treat my life. And just seeing that, because I've seen so many people be affected by diagnosis that took life away or joy of life away when those diagnoses were, even if they were accurate, why? I mean, what's the point? Go live, go do this. And
Exactly right. So there's a word in the title of this book we haven't really addressed yet, although I think we're kind of leaning toward it. So let's bring it in now. It's the first word, relentless, which is that is an emotionally powerful word. When I think of the same concept, I usually think of it as a more calm down persistence. But relentless sounds like a dog hanging on by its jaws. It's just well,
yes, and it's also helps with the title and cylinder book. Let's be clear.
Well, this is true. Yes.
Yeah. But what they're going at in the book, and they're breaking these things down into, you want the mindset to get. It's all about it's all the stuff we believe, just packaged a little differently. The relentless pursuit of positive solutions. I wish positive solutions were in there, because that's sort of what they're talking about. But I'm in a direction of, I want to always be focused. I'm always going to be mission focused on whatever we need to do. When I've been CEO of a few companies, addiction treatment centers, and I've done, and so I am very much a solution focused leader in my mind. I want to get this done. Here's what I want done. Develop the mechanism for me to get that done, and do that. If people learn pretty quickly, say, well, that can't be done. I said, no, that's not true. If I thought of it, it could be done. Now, is it cost effective? There's a lot of factors I have to decide, but I need to get this part done. And let's do it. Just let's get solution oriented. And I believe there's a solution to what I want to do. And the solution is always found. Now, if it costs me $1 million to implement this program to get it done, and I'm only going to profit $300,000 increase, then I'm not going to do the project. I want to know the way to get it done. And so it's that they're about relentlessly looking for the solution to what's there. When you set a goal that, let's say you're making, here's an exact example they're using in the book. Say somebody's making $6,000 a month at a job. They want to make more money. They want to do that. So they want to double that. They want to make $12,000 a month. That's what they want to do. So the solution in their mind is I got to break that down to monthly or weekly increases. And if you set a goal that is, the first month you fall short, the second month you fall short, third month, then you have set a goal that is not really, it's going to start having a reverse effect since you're not reaching it. So that's not a good solution. But if you can get incremental progressions, or you can simply say, I want to do a 10%, something tangible. It can even be, I want to wake up every day and have a more positive perspective. And I'm going to rate that on a scale of 1 to 10 and write it down every day. And you just need some way to track it. But it also doesn't need to be a goal that you're guaranteed to fail at. You want to, just like washing the dishes, that is I call those mini wins. When you get the dishes put away, you've accomplished something. Sometimes people haven't accomplished anything in weeks. So get those dishes done is exciting. As weird as that sounds. So that starts a process of little wins, and we get bigger wins as we go. And the more your brain and mind and your body accepts these realities, then you can get there. But if you keep setting yourself up for goals that aren't achievable too soon, you gotta aim that way. I know as I was working on my finances and all this, I would make progress, and 1 month it would be lower, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And then eventually I just quit focusing on these artificial goals. I need to improve my productivity. I need to attract more money. And all of a sudden it just like went off the charts out of nowhere. It's like, oh, okay. I don't know how that happened, but it's good. It kept happening. And
I like the way that you described the effect of doing the dishes, or something mundane like that, as being exciting. The reason I like it, because I remember the first time I tried doing something like that, and the idea of having finished the dishes as being exciting was nowhere near my chart. I mean, I really didn't see it as being exciting. And it was because I had this idea that exciting was something that was, whoa, this is exciting. I am so thrilled by this thing. But actually what exciting means is to increase the activity of the energy. And if the energy increases, you have been excited.
And that's what this book gets into. When you pursue something relentlessly, you increase the energy, the excitement, and then your energy goes forward. It pulls you through. There was a time after my total everything falling apart. I went in jail, got out of jail. I was living in that halfway house down in Florida, and one of the guys that lived there, he moved out and he got this apartment. And next to the apartment was the back half of his landlord's house, which is a small 1-bedroom little, you can't really call it an apartment, but it is studio kind of thing. But it was on the back end of the house. Well, they were gone most of the time. So it's like I didn't have access to the house, but I had this little area that was great for me. So after the total fall, losing everything, not being able to, going to jail, losing my freedom, losing my civil rights, and losing, I had no credit. I had lost everything. I got to a place where I was able to rent that little place. And it was, and also the landlord would let me offset my rent by mowing the yard. So, I was getting this little studio at the time for like $200 a month, which is an exceptional deal.
Yeah.
And I was able to do it. And I remember when I got everything moved in, and I'm looking around, I started with nothing. I had some clothes and had a couple little jobs. I was working at the halfway house, or the transitional living house, doing counseling. And I looked around and I'm going, this is exciting. I got my own place. I never thought, I thought I was going to die. I thought life was over. And here, by today's standards, it's, it's not anything remotely but at that moment, it was one of the most satisfying feelings I've ever had. And I leaped from that humble restart, began everything else. It was that first step. It's when I reversed the curve And it was the first time I was heading back up after years. And that was exciting. That drove me further. And it was like, maybe this will work out. I don't know how it's going to work out, but maybe somehow I'll get a life. I'll have a way to actually be comfortable and maybe make a living. Maybe that's the case.
That story hits a number of really important points. It hits the point, for instance, of how important it is to appreciate the little wins. By comparison to the rest of society, that was a little win. Compared to where you had been, it was actually a fairly significant win. But compared to the way most people look at it, it's a fairly minor win, but you celebrated it. And you did it naturally. It was like, whoa, this really is, I feel energized by this. You know, that's an example of how your perspective had shifted. You had shifted your perspective in such a way that you were enhancing your life. You were creating change for the better. And it was showing up in your experience.
Yes, and I was attracting better situations. I think I've discussed this as well. I paid off a lot of credit card debt and debts very incrementally, and I started to get great rewards in paying those off.
Yeah.
At one point, when I got out of jail, true story, Walt, there's a credit score that is no credit score. You can have such bad credit. It's called person doesn't qualify for credit score. Just you don't get anything, zero. You can't even get a 100. It's just nothing, right? So that was my credit score, zero. It just wasn't measurable. Nobody would even consider. I couldn't open a checking account because of it. It was just
right.
It was crazy. So as I started paying those bills back, and it was hard to pay them back because I didn't have much income at the time. I was paying incrementally. I gained momentum, and once I got one paid down, then I added. I wanted to get that paid off first, and then I added more to the others, and I eventually cleared all that debt. And as I was doing so, my credit I'm starting to get a measurable credit score. Then I got a secured credit card, and I built that up. And again, I don't say this with arrogance today, but I maintain an 850 literal perfect credit score for the last 7 years.
Nice.
It's just perfect. And it's valuable to me. I take great pride in my credit. I work very hard to get to that credit score. It's something that doesn't really mean anything now, but other than that's how important it was. So my priority shifted to not caring at all about my credit to I want to build that. I want to build it. And as long as it seemed it took me to get my credit back, it wasn't really as long as I thought it was going to be. And so the little wins, the ultimate, and this is, again, the book sort of gets into this concept, the Atomic Habits version of it. I love Atomic Habit, that incremental moving forward and getting excited about each plateau, like win, like, wow, this is nice. When I got my first office with Dr. Master, when I left Williamsville Wellness, it was it was an all right office. It was an older building, and a lot of professionals were in there, but it was just like a little dark. Wasn't my favorite thing, but again, it served me well for a couple of years. And then we got our new place. It's much nicer, in a perfect little park. I love my office right now. It's like, wow, when I moved into that, I appreciated that step up. It was a step up, and I didn't have to have it, but I wanted it, and it was there, so I could keep going forward. And I don't know if I would change offices again or not, but if I do, it'll move up forward again. Mm-hmm. So I know all of that now, and I just the wins along the way. I said this a few weeks ago when we were talking. When I work with clients, I set them up for wins. What is the most basic thing? Set you up for a win. Saw a young man today. He's looking to change careers. And I was reviewing his resume with him, and very bright guy, has a lot of his resume. He's manager of a grocery store, and he's looking to get into some accounting. So he's taken some accounting classes. But he's looking for an entry-level job in an accounting firm. So I'm looking at his resume, and under his job description, he goes, manage a store. I go, buddy, that's not what you do. You handle payroll, you hire, and we go through the list of everything he did. You do pay, you have some accounting experience at work because you have to do that. You manage the budget of the store, you manage inventory in the store, you manage payroll, you do all these things you're managing, and you just said, I manage the store. So he's going to rewrite his resume to include a lot more. And he's the second youngest person to ever achieve store manager in that corporation.
Wow.
And that was never mentioned in his resume. I go, that's our lead story. That's our lead story. You want to sell that. And so, but he was downplaying it. So I set him up for wins. He couldn't get any callbacks. He couldn't get that. I expect after he redoes this, I think he's going to get more noticeable stuff because it's hitting home. It's not, he was trying to be humble and he was not. He was actually setting himself to no enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So, those are steps you can take. Get the wins, get excited. He left. He said, "Man, I'm excited about this." He came in sort of depressed. He said, "This makes sense." So you take these incremental things. It might be rewriting your resume. It might be, just whatever those things could be. Don't underestimate the value of the smallest win, whatever that is. The more you focus on those wins, the more wins you'll have.
Yeah, good phrase right there. The more you focus on those little wins, the more wins you'll have. That's not obvious when you're first focusing on little wins.
No. Well, you most of the time we've been focused on the losses.
Yes.
Again, that's where that problem-centered focus or problem-centered thoughts were. We're programmed for the losses. What we've lost. I lost my job. One of the things that I don't do this as much anymore because it sort of lost its power in a lot of ways, but when somebody would, say, "Joel, I lost my job," I'm like, "Congratulations. Wow." And that doesn't always go over well. Somebody just lost their job. So I try to have a little more empathy for that. But I do feel congratulations because now we get to get going. I am unaware of anyone that I've worked with that didn't improve their scenario after getting fired from a job. Everybody I know has improved their scenario. It doesn't feel like it. When I lost my job at Williamsville Wellness, I wasn't worried. I had plenty of money and I knew I had a pretty good understanding how things worked back then. But I can't, I lost a high paying job. I thought about that, it's wow, that's a pretty high paid job I lost. And they don't grow on trees. I remember saying that, and it's, like, no, I'm fine. I got plenty of money. I can build my practice. As I think I've mentioned 100 times, if I'm being redundant, I apologize. But I was expecting to go a year without making any money, and just till I build my book of business. And 2 weeks I was full, never looked back.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I think is not only remarkable, but it's got a built-in lesson for everybody. If we can just let go of that negative expectation some way. I like Abraham has a way of saying it, Abraham Hicks, right? They say it a little bit differently every time, but what it comes down to is this. You just got to find a way to shift your perspective. You got to find a way to change how you're feeling about this. Whatever it's going to take to change it.
Right.
And that's it.
That's it. That is the $1 million answer for everything. That's why I break this entire book down or life down to the magic of perspective change. The power of having the ability to change your perspective is the solution to all of this stuff. And when you're stuck in patterns of thinking that don't allow you to change your perspective, that's really what is damaging. When you can't change your perspective, or you're stuck in a belief. And the narrative that the United States is falling apart is a really common belief for many people right now.
It is, yeah.
And I mean, they're stuck on it. They cannot accept. They can't look at it any differently. Again, no disrespect for what anybody's going through. My world is not in demise. It's great. It's incredible. I have a great life, and I have the same freedoms I've always had. I have a great career. My kids doing great. It's just everything's where it should be, and I'm not influenced by all that. But there are people that believe and anticipating things are about to get really bad, and I'm anticipating things are about to get really good.
Yeah, and that's it. That lays it out.
Yeah.
Something else too. Of course, it just flipped out of my mind. Let's see if I can bring it back into my mind. Oh, I know what it was. I think there are many different I do know that there are many different modalities, things you can do to shift your perspective, change your attitude, build your energy up, all that kind of stuff. You find a way to be more positive. One of the ones that I have least embraced over the years, and I think this, is journaling. I was just never a fan of it. I didn't like it. I would start writing, my hand would cramp up. I mean, I had 1,000 reasons why I did not like journaling. And so for the most part, except for an occasional thing here or there that fit into a program I was doing or whatever, I wouldn't journal. In the last, when was it? I think it was like mid-July. Because of some circumstances I'm going through, for some reason, I just felt like I need to get myself a 300-page blank journal from Amazon. So I ordered a blank 300-page journal from Amazon, and I started writing in it. And I've been writing, not every day, but pretty close to every day I've been writing in this thing. And writing extensively, which is a shock to me, let me tell you, because I really hate journaling. But here I am doing it. Yeah. One of the things that journaling is doing for me is it's showing me how I have a day, right? And in this day, things didn't feel right, and I was in a bad place, and all this stuff happened. Well, I'll just do this one thing. I'll make this one shift, and I'll write. Oh, maybe something will good to come out of it. Who knows? But I'm not really expecting it. And then the next day, I'm writing something that came out of it without realizing that there was that transition that took place. Yes. And the value of the journal that I'm seeing right now is I can look back and I can actually see from day to day. Oh wow, here is where I made a shift in perspective. Here's where it's showing up over there. I would normally have missed that. Yeah, the journaling is actually is providing a record to me to show me here's where you're actually making shifts that are producing results that you were looking for, even though you didn't think you were going to get there.
And also going full circle to what we're talking about, the journaling allows you to see these little wins that you didn't know were there.
That's right.
And that reinforces it, because when you look back, like right now, today it's August 1st, good day.
It is.
One year ago, what was your biggest problem today, 1 year ago?
1 year ago, my biggest problem was trying to figure out what I've been trying to figure out for the longest time, how to improve our income. I was still married. We were a few months away from a breakup that I didn't know was coming. The only thing I was focused on, what was it going to take for us to get to that next level financially?
And I like how you said, was that something that you were historically doing? I mean, every year, every August 1st, maybe every August 1st?
Oh, I didn't wait for August 1st.
Yeah, but just using the marker of August 1st.
Okay,
yeah. Like it would apply to any day. But my point is, we were to go back and every year. August 1st, it might have been similar type thing.
You throw a dartboard at the calendar, you would hit a day when,
Right. So this August 1st, is that a different perspective now?
Very different. Yes.
So there were some events that happened to you during that time that were seemingly horrible.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, it all sort of unfolded in a weird way where you ended up in pretty good shape.
I ended up in a better shape than where I was at a year ago, which even 6 months ago, I wouldn't have predicted.
Right. So you see that. So journaling allows you to see that. Journaling allows you to, wow, it wasn't a straight arrow. We talked when things were rough. You and I talked. It was rough for you.
It was.
Rightfully so. But there's no way, whether I said it out loud or thought it, I'm like, well, this is all going to come together. And, you weren't necessarily.
You did say that, by the way.
Yeah, I always do.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I said, I don't know how to tell you it will come together, but it will. And it's like magic. It all came together where, wow, this is working out nicely. So you see that I love that journaling can help you see those things, but also those wins, the chain of events that you kept wanting for this improved financial condition, but you didn't want the path that led to the improved financial condition necessarily.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, here we are. And
here we are. Yeah. And it's a great point. It's a really great point, because like you said, I mean, even 6 months ago, I still didn't see how I would get to a point where I'm at right now. I was kind of like setting my expectations lower than that. Like, well, if I can get to here, I'll be doing good. To see some level of stability. I'm actually in a very stable position, much more stable than I thought I would be. And I'm kind of on the brink of something that could be really, really good. I haven't really talked about this. I'm going to mention it here briefly. Listeners who've been around for a while will recognize that about 2 years ago, I came up with an idea that I've been trying to pursue of basically trying to help people who are administrators of Facebook groups to turn it into a side income through providing a way to advertising their groups. And since then, I've been through 3 different sets of software developers trying to make the thing work. Each time it failed miserably. They took off with the money, or they gave me a halfway job, or it just wasn't getting anywhere. I actually put it on the back burner a couple times. Most recently, I put it on the back burner actually about this time last year. Yeah, so there it is again. About a year ago, a little more than a year ago, I put it on the back burner, and then I took it off the back burner this past spring by trying once again, talk about that relentlessness, one more time. Let's see if we can find some good developers this time. And I found some, and they're in the midst of putting this project together. It's a 4 milestone project, so we've broken it up into Actually, I had them break it up into milestones. Tell me what they're going to accomplish each step of the way. The first milestone is done. The second one will be done this coming Friday. There's a very good chance that the 4th milestone is going to be done by the beginning of September. There's actually a little extra milestone we're going to have to tack on to the end that we kind of overlooked. But I'm going to be able to test this thing by like mid-September.
I love
it. A year ago, the idea of being able to test it by this coming September, that was laughable.
Yeah.
That was not possible.
And the change, I'm really a big believer when all the things that took place, good, bad, and ugly, are part of the process of this being here now.
They are.
Yeah.
Yes. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah. So, that's, I mean, when you look at that, that's super exciting. And, as you know, one of my projects is I'm lobbying the state of Virginia for legal use of psilocybin in therapeutic settings.
Right.
So that's been a big thing for me. So I've been doing it. A couple of my friends who are doctors, we've just been sort of doing our own version of lobbying, which I'm not really good at because I find politicians just wildly bizarre. So I have been offered, have everybody approached me. A lot of money has been pledged. To set this thing up. And I don't want anything to do with the money yet. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want access, like I've had like $7 million offered. I don't want it. Wow. Let's get something going and then I'll get somebody else handling it.
I hear you. Right.
I don't want to get all that stuff. So I had a guy approach me the other day. He said, look, why don't we go ahead and set up the corporations? Why don't we get that done? We can have a holding company, and then out of the holding company, we can get professional lobbyists in here to really knock this around and see if we can't speed this up, because the rate you're doing it, you're just not going to make a difference. And I'm like, well, that's not a bad idea. So yeah. I never sought to raise money. The money was just raised. It's just, in fact, people say, when you get something, can I buy in? What's and I'm like, I don't know yet. I'm not that far. Money isn't that thing anymore. It's just, I want this. This is a vision of mine. I can see it happening, and the money will be gobs of money. It'd be tons of money. It's not the point. The point to me is to get this vision done. And so my perspective would always be money first, figured out later. Now it's like, let's get this done. The money's going to pour in when we get it done. It's just you can't stop it at that point. But again, perspective shift gets things done. I didn't even know I was attracting somebody who's going to be setting up these things, handling that.
I love that.
He has an accounting. He works for an accounting firm. He wants in on the company, so he's willing to do all of that for free to get a little percentage of the company. And,
wow.
And so he'll be our CFO, and which I love. So it's just,
that's really exciting. That's very exciting.
Every doctor I meet in town is like, Joel, don't leave me out of this. Don't leave me out of this. It's just, everybody wants that. So it's just fascinating when things just start to flow. Because there was a time I would have an entirely different perspective of what was important. And the least important thing in all of this is money. Money is easy now. I just got to convince the legislature here to allow therapeutic use. And while it seems like a no-brainer to me, it's a harder chore than it sounds, because the biggest concern of these people is they want to be reelected. That's all they care about. Right. And they want to stay in power. So their concept is, they've literally told me to my face, great idea. I hope you get it done. There's no way I can vote for you because my constituents would think I was crazy. But wow, thank you.
I love that last part. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm like, I said, wow, it's just thank you for your lesson in politics. I didn't know it was that bad. So it's just, But you get that. It's just so you're in this space. I have no doubt this is going to be successful because whatever some of the blocks were for historical, financial slow, not enough financially and not getting projects, those blocks have clearly been removed. Your perspective of it has been removed, changed for better. Instead of the negative perspective or the belief that there's no way to get this done. Now you got a team that I find it's not ironic. You now have the right team in place to provide this, which is spectacular.
It is spectacular, and I'm also reminded too. I'm not equating therapeutic psilocybin to marijuana and cannabis, but there is a political similarity in that
yes.
Some 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the idea that any state in the union could ever want to legalize the use of marijuana was just insane. That just was not going to happen. And now it's sweeping the country in a relatively short period of time. Now, from the perspective of the people who are the advocates who've been pushing it for the last 50 years, it wasn't all that short a period of time. But for most of us looking on the outside in, that just like swept through here. What happened?
Yeah, it did. It did. And one of the funny things, the ironies in all of this is not getting into a psilocybin discussion too much, but here I go. The idea that psilocybin is not addicting. It's straightforward, changes the brain, positive way for most people. And we're still researching all the ways it can help. But you know what is legal here in Virginia?
What?
Ketamine.
Really?
Yeah, ketamine's legal. Now, a literal party drug just doesn't have the same. It's just what an absurd thing to make legal and not have psilocybin legal. It's just.
Was it actually legalized, or did it slip through the cracks, or how did that work?
I don't know the pathway how they even got there.
Okay.
I haven't researched it, but I'm not. Doctors are giving ketamine infusions. Are you kidding me? And
wow.
And it's just, again, I'm not trying to get on I don't know enough about ketamine. It's not my deep dive, but I do know that there's more risk and more addictive. Has a more addictive nature. Yeah. It's called Special K in the club. It is literally, it's a club drug. Yeah. So but again, I'm just fascinated how some things can get there. And other things become, but it's just the way the process is. So there's no negativity to it. I'm just fascinated. I have no doubt we're going to get this at some point. We're going to get where. Also, we're doing some other things in other neighboring states as well. Because the first one to pop is where I'm going to fire my gun. So it might be North Carolina. It's here to the west and south. It's just somebody around here is going to blink, and when I do, we'll be ready.
I have no doubt it's going to happen too. That's the other part. Yeah. I mean, it's because there's enough history that shows that it doesn't matter how intransigent the politicians are. It really doesn't make any difference. Yeah, they're intransigent. Yeah, they're not going to ever support it because their constituents wouldn't vote them into office. But you know what? It changes. It changes anything.
I'll tell you a good example, and we may cross that pathway here as well. We may go to the edge. When opiate treatment became available, when it became mainstream. Do you understand what happened?
I know that it did, but I don't really know what the timeline was.
Okay. So again, this is when poor people in the ghetto, people lower economic conditions were dying of all these drugs. Mm-hmm. That's just what those people do. That was the narrative. That's what those people do. Mm-hmm. When the upper middle class 16-year-old kid died in his driveway here in Richmond, Virginia from a heroin overdose. We got a problem. We have a drug problem now.
It became more personal.
Yeah. And so then the people that now, I'm glad whatever it took to get us there, I'm glad, but it took that shift where it took the middle class and the upper middle class to start being affected by it before the whole attitude changed. Instead of those people that's what they do. This is outrageous. They're marketing this to our kids. They're giving us the whole perspective changed when the right people, so to speak, got affected by this, and it changed that. And it's just and again, I'm not being negative. It's just what happened. But in fact, I'm glad that it finally got to a place where we could, because everybody got universally helped at that point when the right people got affected, so to speak.
Yeah. It really does illustrate, once again, there are lots of it does, you can take it outside of the realm of drugs. You can find all kinds of examples within the political realm of things that had shifted or changed that couldn't possibly change, usually against what the political elite wanted. That's the most consistent part of the pattern. The political elite, they like to be in power. They rarely get anything done. Stuff happens despite what they want rather than because of what they want, which is kind of an interesting phenomenon.
Which I love, because one of the things that's going on right now, there's a lot of things going on right now, sort of similar to that. But the most frustrating thing to politicians right now is they so desperately want to control Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. It drives them crazy that you could have something they don't know about. And so when they keep saying we're going to do this to Bitcoin, they really don't have any, they can make it illegal. They could. They still can't control it. There's no. And that drives them crazy. It's just, which I just love. I just think it's hilarious. It's because the monetization of the U.S. dollar is one of the way they control the using the weaponization of the U.S. dollar is something that's always been used to punish other countries, even our own citizens. And they don't know. They don't know who has Bitcoin, who doesn't, especially if you have an offline wallet. It can be stored somewhere, anywhere. They never know. That drives them crazy.
Well, I'll share a secret with you. I mentioned my Facebook project, and the major part of that impetus, yes, I'm hoping that it's becoming successful once we launch it so that I can, be able to do more in my own life. But honestly, my biggest motivation is to make it easy for millions of people to have an easy side hustle.
Yes.
With the idea that the more people who do that, the less power that the monetary system has over them.
I have a whole concept. Everyone I work with, I love side hustles. I love I love these things you can do. I have a young man that he makes YouTube scripts by AI. He has some guy at Fiverr animate it, use a artificial voice, send it back to him. He's making a fortune just posting these videos that he never does. It's just amazing. And he's not lying. He says, I create these videos using AI.
Yeah.
And he's getting all these hits. He just finds whatever the top 10 news stories are. He does a news script on it, does a video with animation, and he's crushing it.
That's really wild. That's really
so and so they're empowered. So one day when the government can't control it, when side hustles are available and you can make money in the non-traditional way, first of all, if they ever let go, the country would be wildly more successful. It would be fantastic.
Oh, of course. Yes.
But they can't let go of the control. The perception they got to control it all is what is crazy.
Well, that's why I love my project so much. Maybe I'm kind of married to it in this sense, but I love it because it doesn't matter whether they let go. It makes no difference whatsoever.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is just empowering millions and millions of people to have side hustles with very little effort. And that just shifts the whole narrative. It doesn't matter who's in power. It doesn't matter what their policies are. It doesn't matter what their belief system is. Conservative, liberal, it doesn't make any difference. It has no effect on the fact that the side hustles are increasing massively on an exponential basis.
And while that we need more of that, because that's the new economy. It also threatens the concept that everybody needs a college degree or everybody needs all these degrees. It threatens that. I know I have 17-year-old clients that are they're still in high school making $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
And I have to talk them into just finishing high school just because it looks good. You're already here. Let's just finish this off. You don't need to go to college. You don't. You're good. Just do it. Just go.
Very exciting. What a cool way to wrap this up, because the topic was the book by Dr. Selk, Relentless Solution Focus. And what we're talking about here at the end is the result of being relentless.
I don't know exactly how we got here, because I don't think we talked about the book much, which is fine.
Well, we don't talk about the book so much. We talked about the concept of the book. But yeah, you're right.
We primed the well today. This is a classic Walt Joel. Wherever we go, we just talk and it works. So great session today. I love talking with you today. It's great.
I loved it too. This has been fabulous. So thank you much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.